Received or expecting to receive a fine for parking on double yellow lines? Let's look at the rules here, find out what the penalty could be, and see if there's any way out of paying. The Highway Code states that you must not stop or wait or park on double yellow lines. This is the case even if there aren't any further signs telling you not to stop or park. Specifically, the Highway Code states that double yellow lines indicate a prohibition of waiting at any time, even if there are no upright signs. So if you stopped on double yellow lines, then you might have to expect a fine, but there are some exceptions. For instance, there might be times when you can stop briefly to unload a vehicle. Additionally, blue badge holders can often park on single or double yellow lines for up to 3 hours. You need to check local signs and road markings to see if you can quickly stop and unload. A pair of lines over the edge of a curb indicates that you cannot stop to unload, and even blue badge holders cannot park where loading restrictions are in place. So unless you meet one of the exceptions mentioned, you can be issued a fine for parking on double yellow lines. These fines can be hefty, so you'll want to avoid getting one. Receiving a ticket from a council parking warden, officially known as a civil enforcement officer, is the most likely source of a ticket for a double yellow line violation. They can issue you with a penalty charge notice, either in person or by sticking it on your windscreen. The council can also issue you with a penalty charge notice via the post. You could also be served with a fixed penalty notice by a police officer. These are different to penalty charge notices. They offer you the chance to accept the fine instead of having to go to a magistrate's court over the matter. There is no appeals procedure for an FPN. You can either accept it or go to court to argue your case. However, there is a loophole which might get you out of paying a fixed penalty notice. To be issued with a fixed penalty notice, you must first be issued with a Notice of Intended Prosecution, or NIP. This process has time limits, which, if exceeded, become a convenient loophole for not having to pay. At the time of an offence, an enforcement officer or police officer can give you an NIP verbally, but if you're caught by a camera instead, then the NIP will be posted out to whoever's the registered owner of the vehicle. These postal NIPs must be sent within 14 days of the alleged offence. It has been known for the police to send a Notice of Intended Prosecution late, and things like bank holidays or a postal strike could also delay an NIP. If your NIP wasn't sent to you within 14 days of the offence, then the police can no longer prosecute. This means you cannot be served with a fixed penalty notice, and therefore don't have to pay a fine. The police won't necessarily know that it arrived late, so be sure to send it back as out of time. Otherwise, you risk being summoned to a magistrate's court for failing to comply. However, if the NIP was served within 14 days, then there is a second time limit that the police need to adhere to. They only have 6 months to issue you with the actual fine, the fixed penalty notice. So if there's a delay sending you your fixed penalty notice, then you might not have to pay. However, as we're dealing with a much more significant time frame, 6 months instead of 2 weeks, this one is less likely to occur. But if your fixed penalty notice does arrive late, then like a late NIP, you need to let the police know why it is you won't be paying. If instead you were issued with a penalty charge notice by the council, then this could cost anywhere between £50 and £80 depending on location and the seriousness of the offence. Councils typically see parking on double yellow lines as a more serious offence compared to just not paying to park in a normal parking space. A council penalty charge notice is an official fine, which means there's a strict process to follow. Ignore a council penalty charge notice, then after 28 days, the council will send out a formal notice called a charge certificate. This notice won't just inform you of the missed payment deadline, it will also increase your fine by 50%. You'll only get 14 days to pay this, or a court order will be issued, which could then result in the use of a bailiff. In short, if it's a penalty charge notice from the council, then either pay up or appeal promptly. Never ignore it. It's important to also remember that if you pay a council PCN within 14 days of receiving the fine, you'll be able to get a 50% reduction in the fee. So if you don't actually have a good reason to appeal, you might want to pay sooner. So how do you actually appeal a council PCN? Well, how you receive the PCN will determine how you should respond. If you received it in person or found it placed on your car, then you need to make an informal appeal to the council first. Normally it involves writing a letter that details why you think that the PCN was wrongly issued. If that informal appeal is rejected, you can then escalate your appeal to a formal appeal. A formal appeal, or representation as they're sometimes called, is your last chance to appeal, so you might want to gather even more evidence for the formal appeal. If you received your PCN as a letter through the door, then you won't be able to write an informal appeal and you'll have to skip straight to the formal appeal process. To actually make your appeal, you'll need the PCN number from your ticket or letter. With this, you should be able to access the appeals section of the relevant council's website and submit your information on there. Without a doubt, the hardest part of all this is writing the letter itself. You need to gather up the evidence that you think is in your favour and lay it out clearly for the council to judge. This is where you may prefer to seek the advice of a solicitor. This could cost far less than you might imagine, with services like JustAnswer offering a trial for only £5. I'll leave my link to that in the description below. So what are some good reasons to appeal against a double yellow line fine? Firstly, whilst as mentioned councils don't need to signpost double yellow line areas, the lines themselves should still be clearly marked. If these were absent, then that could give you good grounds for an appeal. But instead of just simply stating that you believe that the road markings were unclear, you could greatly strengthen your appeal by returning to the scene of the crime and snapping a few supporting photos. Just don't park on the double yellow lines a second time. Another reason to appeal might be that you'd broken down and needed to wait for a recovery service. In this case, try to get some sort of mechanic's invoice or a witness statement from them in order to support your appeal. In a similar vein, if pretty much any genuine emergency caused you to stop, then so long as you can prove it, you could have good grounds for an appeal. You are not allowed to edit or change your appeal after submission. Therefore, it's important to take your time beforehand to prepare the appeal and include everything you need for it to be successful. If you're finding it hard to know what to say or what evidence you should include, then a popular option is to consult a solicitor who can help to make your appeal airtight. There's many online solicitors that work out cheaper and easier than meeting in person. JustAnswer, for example, only costs £5 for a trial. One of my colleagues managed to save over £270 on a parking ticket by using their service. I've linked that offer down in the description, and if you use that, you'll also be supporting Money Nerd, so thank you.